Hello, hello. Welcome to another installment of Cage's Comments. I am Alex Cage, and today the comments will be about the Spurs offseason, rest of the offseason, I should say, post draft preview. I made a video yesterday about their three guard problem and why I think ultimately they should keep Fox for another year, and I think they will keep Fox for another year if Brian Wright's comments are to be believed. But this will be about the rest of the roster and free agency, which will spin up here this coming up week and next weekend as we head into July. So this will be about the Spurs. I'll probably do reaction videos to free agent news. I actually just saw today Masai Ujiri is throwing Dallas's hat reportedly into the ring for the services of Kawhi Leonard. I talked about a possible return to San Antonio with Kawhi when those rumors popped up the same day as the LaMelo Ball trade, which I also discussed in a previous video. I will do a short recap of that for the Spurs here in this one. I think, I'll do that at the end when we talk about trade targets and potential upgrades at that power forward spot if they don't land someone in free agency and what that could look like. But let's start off with the current state of the roster. As it stands, we've got Stephon Castle, Harper, Fox, Vassell, Champagnie, Bryant, Johnson, number 20 pick in the draft, Jaden Quaintus, of course, Wimby, Cornette, and Reed, the 26th pick in the draft, Terrence Reed Jr. out of UConn at the center spots. So that is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 11 guys with Wimby, Champagnie, Keldon Johnson, and Vassell all extension eligible. Harrison Barnes is a free agent. We will talk about him a little bit. I don't think I say we'll talk about him a little bit as if I'm going to do it later. I'm actually going to do it right now because I don't think the Spurs need to bring Barnes back. He fell out of the rotation after his injury. Carter Bryant should probably fill more of that role going forward and more of those minutes. But assuming it's not for too much more than the vet minimum, then I certainly don't think it's a bad idea to have him fill out the bottom of the roster as a good vet presence, given again that now all of the Spurs have, except for the rookies, deep playoff run experience, but it's just the one. Barnes obviously has been to a couple of finals and won one with the Warriors, so having his experience on the team is certainly not a bad thing, but the Spurs certainly don't need to be spending any kind of real resources to bring him back if somebody's looking to pay Harrison Barnes at this stage of his career, which I don't think anyone is, but that's that. So as far as the extension eligible players, Wimby is probably the least interesting to actually talk about because they're going to give him the max. They're going to put in the escalators for when or if he wins another Defensive Player of the Year or first team All NBA. It's going to be 5 years, I think 251 or 5 years, close to 300 million. I believe I saw that because of the blood clots and him not being eligible for the awards the previous season, that is for some reason disqualified him from getting like the Supermax. I imagine they'll put language in there that when he wins another one of those regular season awards, that they'll escalate the contract to the Supermax and he can get the 30 or 35% of the cap or whatever it is. Wimby, again, I don't think it's real interesting. The Spurs are going to slide that across the table. Wimby's going to sign it, and he's going to be locked up for 4 or 5 years. The only piece of that is, I think, a bit noteworthy to just kind of mark down, have in the back of your head, is whether or not he gets a player option at the end of the contract, right? If the last year of the contract is there, or if it's a player option. If it's a player option, then all that really means is obviously he's got, there's one less year of guaranteed Wimby in terms of, every watch that every team has of their superstar potentially wanting to ask out or leave or anything like that. Again, Spurs just made the finals in Wimby's year 3. I cannot imagine that, there's a path that exists where he actually wants out, but that's really the only noteworthy part, I think, of Wemby's contract is whether or not it's a full 5 years or whether the last year is a player option or not. The next guy I want to talk about is Champagnie, because I do think that is going to be the first real kind of domino or decision to be made with the Spurs and kind of managing their cap moving forward, right? So Champagnie's got a team option this year for $3 million as I pull up the Spurs roster here on Spotrac. The Spurs next season are going to pay De'Aaron Fox $49.5, $50 million, and then nobody else makes even $30 million. John Hollinger, who I really like from The Athletic, has his big old dollars rating dollars, right, where he kind of uses his own stats and analysis to project what a player's salary should be for free agents, and he's got Champagnie at $25 million a year. I think that sounds about right. That's not too far off from like Cam Johnson money, which is a very similar role and caliber, I think, of player this year with Champagnie. Johnson's a little bit better of a shooter. One of the things that Champagnie does that I think is a bit underrated is he's a very good defensive rebounder. He's one of probably the 15 or 20 best non-centers in basketball at rebounding. He averages 8.5 per 100 possessions. He is really good at that, and that's really valuable because the Spurs want to play with, kind of as much spacing around Wemby and their guards, who are not great shooters, as possible. Champagnie unlocks that a lot, and if you can do that at his size and still rebound well, that's one of the reasons why their starting five, I think, worked so well once they went to him playing in for Barnes. So, what should they do? I don't think $25 million a year is crazy for Champagnie. He's 6'7". He plays really good defense. He knocks down 38% of his threes on 6 a game. It's a high volume. He's a good player. That is the quintessential 3-and-D kind of player. I think what will be interesting with the Champagnie contract is if they can get him to agree to a similar structure that Devin Vassell agreed to. So Vassell, when he signed his contract, it was 5 years, $135 million. First year of that deal, he made $29 million, and then he's going to make $27 every other year, except for not next season, but the year after, he'll actually make $25. So they got him on kind of a declining contract structure. I really think that could make a ton of sense for the Spurs with Champagnie and would help out from a cap standpoint. So 5 years, 125, if you had a declining structure, would look something like $30 million. They decline his team option this year, sign him. That way his largest salary is this coming up season where you're not paying anybody else. You're not, right? It's Fox, Vassell at 27.5, Keldon Johnson at 18, and then Wemby at 16, right? Wemby, Harper, Castle, they're all still on their rookie contracts this season. This is the last year of that, right? Wemby will get his extension, and it'll kick in the 27, 28 years. So if you extend Champagnie at 125, and you can get him to agree to a descending salary structure, then it's $30 million this year, but it's 27 when Wemby's extension kicks in. It's 25 when Castle's extension kicks in, and it's 22 when Harper and/or Bryant's extension kicks in, and then it's 20 the year after that. That's much more manageable, especially when you then factor in, right, the cap should be rising every single year as part of the new CBA. And it's not just, look, there still may come a point where on this contract you need to, for flexibility reasons, or Bryant, really shows out as a shooter and he's a better replacement, whatever the case may be, that you need to move Champagnie. Getting him on a contract like this makes that trade a lot more intriguing for any other potential suitors. anyone who wants to pursue that for from the other side for the Spurs, right? So you're not trying to convince them then to take on the year of $30 million for Champagny as opposed to the years of 22 or $20 million. So I think that would be the correct move to obviously keep a guy who was a starter on your finalist team without hamstringing yourself down the road in terms of salary cap and flexibility to continue to improve and keep the roster around Wimby. So that's what I would do. That's what I'd like to see. I'm a big Champagny fan. I think fourth, fifth starter on a finalist team. Again, quintessential 3-and-D guy. And so the structure of that deal is what I will be paying attention to way more than necessarily what the first year of money is, because what he makes next year is not super relevant given all of the Spurs' best players are on rookie contracts, right? So that's Champagny. Next guy is Keldon Johnson. So Keldon Johnson, if you've read seemingly any story about the Spurs last season, was and is the heart and soul of this team. Seems to have a really good relationship with Wimby, which, as Luka Doncic and Austin Reeves have shown, that might actually be one of the best pieces of leverage for negotiations. Is, hey, the best player on this team, your generational star, me and him are best friends. You probably don't want to ship me out. That being said, Keldon, he does not need to be extended at all. He was massively disappointing in the playoffs. He was the sixth man of the year during the regular season, and then he was damn near unplayable come the postseason. He played 23 minutes a game in the regular season. He played 18 minutes a game in the first 3 rounds. He played 15 minutes a game in the finals, capped off by a game in which he played 8 minutes to end the season. I point, I think, to a lot of stats for Keldon in terms of almost anything. Everything fell off a cliff come the postseason, whether it's his PER, his true shooting percentage, his points per game, everything fell off. There's a stat, and again, unless otherwise denoted, all stats are from Basketball Reference or Data Ball R. But there's a stat from Data Ball R they call S turnovers. So it's the percentage of your turnovers, of a player's turnovers, that happen when they are attempting to score as opposed to like bad passes, right? During the regular season, Keldon had an S turnover rate of 4.8%, right? It's called 5. In the playoffs, it was 11%. He is a 6'5" bully ball power forward. And I think it was just very clear that he did not have the handle or skill to play that way come the postseason, where more physicality is allowed, where you're not playing the end of the bench guys, you're just playing better teams, all of that. And I don't really see, Keldon Johnson is in year 7. Yeah, 7. Keldon Johnson's in year 7. You don't really see, for the most part, players get drastically better post that. So while, he is the longest tenured Spur, and he has been part of this organization since he was drafted, right? And is, part of the kind of young core. He is not a young player anymore. So I don't see a path where, in an ideal world, he is still a key part of the rotation come next postseason. You are hoping, I think, I certainly am, that Carter Bryant is taking pretty much all of his minutes and role come next season, come the beginning of the year, and certainly by the postseason. I think if he's extended, it needs to be on a kind of like Aaron Wiggins, Isaiah Joe type contract, where hey, we like you guys. We developed you in house here in OKC, and now we need to kind of skirt the second apron. And it's really easy to take $11 million, $12 million, or whatever, and get some second round picks, or dump a second round pick, or whatever the case may be, and get that off our books. Um, I think that's kind of where KJ fits on this team moving forward. That postseason run was just really, really bad. And they've got Harper, obviously, if he's still coming off the bench next season, is going to do all of the vast majority of the shot creation and scoring for that second unit. And Carter Bryant's a better athlete. He's younger, and I think has more upside in terms of being a good shooter and floor spacer as well. So, and is certainly a better defender, I think, already at this point. So I'm not sure where KJ really fits in, especially once you get to the postseason next year and you're shrinking the rotation down to 8 guys. I'm not sure he's got a role really on this team competing forward. So I haven't seen anything that says the Spurs are looking to offload him. I do think if they make a trade, his contract, because it's expiring at this point, will probably be part of that, right? If they're looking at upgrading through trade acquisition as opposed to free agency. So, last guy that is technically extension eligible, will be real quick here, is Devin Vassell. I don't think the Spurs, I haven't seen anything that says the Spurs are looking to extend him right now. They don't need to. He's got 3 years left on his deal, right? He's already signed his rookie extension. He's got 3 years left on that. So there shouldn't really be any urgency. He's on a good deal. Again, if the Spurs down the line in 2 or 3 years need to move him, they will be able to. He's not making a ton of money. He's going to make 27 this year, 25, and then 27 the last 3 years of this deal. So no real urgency with Vassell. I don't think there's anything that needs to be done. I like Vassell. He's a good player. He was excellent, I think, defensively for the Spurs in the postseason. He was excellent. In my recap video, I talked about how good of a job he did on Shea, held him to I think 32% on effective field goal percentage or something like that. It was below 40. It was better than anybody else on the team. He did a really good job, and I think he did a good job on Brunson too. I think he's an excellent 3-and-D player, and had some big shots and big moments for the Spurs. So he's got 3 years left. I don't think there's any urgency to do anything with his contract at this point in time, nor do I really think there should be. So let's talk about what's going to happen here at the end of this month and going into July free agency. Who the Spurs should be looking at and where their team needs are. Biggest need, and I think probably the only thing that would be considered a true need for this team, something that you would want them to have come postseason, come playoff time, right? Could they use another point guard to pick up some of the minutes when guys miss games? Sure, they could. Whether you re-sign McLaughlin or keep one of the second round picks or something like that. But in terms of true needs that would help this team get over the hump next season, I think everyone, and if you've listened to any basketball discussion or anything like that in the last month post finals, a true power forward for the Spurs. Someone to actually play four, that could ostensibly still stretch the floor for them, provide spacing, and maybe help out rebounding when Wemby is out there, erasing stuff chasing blocks, right? Somebody to guard Towns, right, with a bigger body, because as good of a rebounder as I've mentioned, I think Champagnie is. He is not, built in a manner that would, to match up kind of in the post with bigger bodies, right? So there are, in my opinion, 2 free agent power forwards that are that would be good fits for what the Spurs need and what they could look at, and then also price. So the Spurs they're over the cap, but they're under the tax. They're not approaching either of the aprons. They're fine in that regard. but they're not going to operate as tax based, so they have access to the mid level exception, which is about $15 million. So the two guys that I think that they should look at are Rui Hachimura and John Collins. So Rui has the body type and the floor spacing that you would want. He's 6'8". He is broad shouldered, listed at 230 on Basketball Reference, and he shot 44% from three last season. And the year before that, he shot 41% from three. And the year before that with the Lakers, he shot 42%. So he's a good 3-point shooter. Now, it's not a high volume of threes. It's 4-ish a game. In the postseason, he did up it this year. He shot almost 6 a game at a ridiculous 56%. Right, so he has shown that he can up the volume, but he is not day in day out going to be a very high volume 3-point shooter. But he could still stand in the corner, hit those threes, and then he's got the body type that you would like in terms of matching him up with guys like Karl-Anthony Towns or a guy like Jokic when you have Wemby, coming over as the help defender off a poor shooter. That being said, the one thing that Rui is not is a great rebounder. So he averaged less than 4 a game last season. In the regular season for the Lakers, right around 3.3, and in the postseason, he averaged 4. Right, and the postseason obviously started all those games. That's in 38 minutes a game. He is not dominant on the boards. He's not going to really help in that regard. On the other hand, John Collins is a good rebounder. So he's right up around 5 a game last season with the Clippers. And I think he's a better athlete. So he's listed at 6'9", but kind of slim at 226. But he's a better rebounder. And because of that athleticism, I think he would give the Spurs a lob threat. He'd be able to get out and run, I think, better in transition, which is what the Spurs really want to do, right? They want to get stops defensively. They want to get out and run. Collins is an excellent athlete. Also, because of that, he is able to make a few more, I think, plays defensively when you consider blocks or steals, things like that, where his athleticism is able to just kind of make things happen on that end at a higher rate than what Rui is able to do. So if it were me and I had the choice between the two of them, I initially went into the offseason after having watched Rui kind of torch throughout the playoffs and shoot really well. I had gone in thinking, probably Rui. But after digging in a little bit, I think Collins would actually be a better fit for the Spurs and how they want to play. I also would be curious to see, kind of what Rui thinks his role should be after playing really well in the postseason, if he thinks he should kind of have a more featured or prominent role or not. But obviously on the Spurs, that's just really not going to happen. Whereas I think John Collins has settled very well into the I hit corner threes and I run the floor and, I am a lob threat, right? So I think Collins would fit better with his athleticism and his rebounding and help out. So I would rather take Collins in free agency, but I'd be very happy with either of those additions to the Spurs. That was a weird pause right there. I'm not quite sure why I did that, but nonetheless. So those are the guys in free agency. Rui or Collins at power forward would be a really good addition, I think, to this lineup and rotation. So that being said, if the Spurs want to what's the word I'm looking for? Investigate, take a look at potential trade candidates to fill that need, to fill the power forward spot. There are some guys that I think they could take a look at. So I'll start off with this. I think if they're going to make a big splash at power forward through trade, they would, I think, obviously prefer to for that to be Fox. And I don't think right now that that's probably viable in terms of other teams wanting Fox, right? So all of these trade targets are probably next off season. That being said, I want to start off with two guys that have either been rumored to the Spurs in the past or are going to be at the forefront uh, as forwards that are kind of on the block, and that's Lauri Markkanen and Trey Murphy. The reason I want to start with them is because I don't think it's realistic for the Spurs to go after them. So for Markkanen, he is a excellent player and offensively would be probably the best of any of these guys that the Spurs could go get. I'm putting Kawhi in kind of a separate basket, but of the superstar guys that the Spurs could go get, Markkanen might be the best of them on from an offensive standpoint. He's an excellent shooter. He's an excellent shooter off the move as well. I'm not going to pretend like I've watched a ton of Utah games, but I've always been very impressed with Markkanen's highlights and the few games that I have seen particularly when they play Spurs, or how much he moves offensively and how much he's able to run around at his size and shoot really well off the catch and off the move. Danny Ainge has never made a trade that he didn't wipe the floor with the other team that was of consequence, right? With the exception, I guess, technically of the Luka trade, of which the Jazz were a part of, and they hid that entirely from Danny, right? He had no idea what was going on. They were just like, hey, we need to offload this salary, and we'll give you a second round pick for it. He said, great, cool. Everything else, he basically wipes the floor. I cannot imagine. This is a guy right, sold off Rudy Gobert for 5 first-round picks, which has started this all-in slide from the Timberwolves, right? I just don't see a path to getting Markkanen because they wouldn't want Fox. They just drafted Peterson. They have the guard's name is Keyshawn George. I just don't see a path where the Spurs can make a move for Markkanen that doesn't involve giving up 5 first-round picks or something ridiculous that they would demand Castle as well. Like there's no path there. I think with Ainge of actually having kind of an equitable deal with the Jazz for Markkanen. Trey Murphy is a really good player. I don't think he's quite the right kind of forward for the Spurs. He's a little bit smaller, listed at I think less than 220. He's a slimmer build, and the Pelicans reportedly are asking for 3 first-round picks. Which one of the things about bringing in a guy like Murphy who can create his own shot a bit is that the Spurs are kind of over-indexed on shot creation, right? They have a ton of it. Wemby likes to play on the perimeter and create his own shots. Harper, Castle, and Fox. So even if, again, ostensibly Fox is one of the guys that you're sending out the door for this, if you're bringing in someone that expects to have the ball in his hands a bit and make his own plays, that's not really I think, spot on the offense that is open. Now, we're going to talk about some guys who that might also be the case, but A, I think they're either better players, or B, the timeline for them, given their age, for a couple of these guys are different. So I'm going to pause this real quick and then come back because I need to get something to drink. And I'm back. All right. So Markkanen and Murphy, I don't think is quite the right type of forward for the Spurs in terms of what he could bring. Markkanen, I think the cost would just be astronomical given who his GM is. Also, I would have some concerns about his defense mobility, given how much the Spurs dedicate to making sure that Wemby's the low man. Now, maybe they would move Wemby and have him play on the perimeter a little more, which would be, I think, terrifying for the people that he has to guard out there. But that's why I don't think those guys are quite viable. Of trade candidates or targets that I would like to see, even if we're reaching for the moon, So in terms of like a young guy that the Spurs could bring in that I think would be awesome defensively, they would have to. I would be a little worried about his jump shot. Franz from the Magic, right? If the Magic, again, I don't necessarily think that this would be this summer, but hey, they just took the Spurs assistant Sweeney, right? He's the head coach there now. Maybe he loves Fox. Maybe he would love to bring in Fox's speed and pace and creation. And it's like, yeah, we've got Desmond Bain and Suggs and Paolo and Wendell Carter. We've got more than enough defense behind him, length behind him, size, all of that. We could absolutely use a little injection, someone besides Desmond Bain on the perimeter to create his own shot. I don't think that's the case, but maybe next season if the Magic kind of flame out again and they're looking at blowing the Paolo Franz duo up, Franz would be an excellent target. I think, you know, again, the concern there is Franz's shooting. If you can get it back to, 35, 36% what he was as a rookie, then you really like that. He's an excellent defender. And while he is not thick, so to speak, he's listed at 6'10". He's long. I don't think I've ever really felt like he got bullied. And that Detroit and Orlando series changed when he got hurt, which would be another concern with Franz. But I would like Franz. Again, he's making $40 million, so that would be a De'Aaron Fox trade. So probably something to keep an eye on, either maybe at the deadline at the earliest, but probably a next offseason kind of move. All right. Then there's Michael Porter Jr. Michael Porter Jr. is an excellent shooter, provides a ton of spacing, and you've seen him be a contributor on a champion before with Denver. The biggest concerns with MPJ are role. He got to play a lot more on the ball this year in Brooklyn for a terrible team, but he may have preferred that, right? Actually getting this was the guy who was probably going to be a lot higher than I think the 14th pick in the draft had he not had the back injuries that he had in college and early in his career. But he would provide the most spacing. He's also shown that he can be really effective in a just catch and shoot role. Now again, that kind of determines the question of what does he view his role as? Because if he prefers and wants the ball in his hands, the Spurs are over indexed on guys who have that. That's not going to be his role. That wouldn't be his role with the Spur. Again, his salary also pretty much necessitates that would be a De'Aaron Fox move, salary for salary, but he fits, I think, the power forward spot as well. And if Brooklyn is, looking to cash in, that could be a this offseason move because he's got 1 year left on his deal. And it's not like Brooklyn's winning anything. They might want to make way for their young guys, right? Then there's also a true role player, which is PJ Washington from Dallas. So Dallas is reportedly, as of today, as I saw on Twitter, I believe from Jake Fisher, reportedly interested in the Kawhi piece of this. And I would imagine that PJ Washington would be involved in that deal. So obviously, if they're going after Kawhi, that's not going to be a thing. But that would be a perfect, hey, you're a rebuilding team. We're a contending team. PJ Washington is much more valuable to a contending team as opposed to a rebuilding team. He's got 4 years left on his deal. Why don't we swap Keldon Johnson for PJ Washington? Dallas gets his expiring money, and then the Spurs would also throw in, obviously, I think a first round pick or one of the two guys that they just drafted in the first round if the Mavs would prefer that. I don't think PJ Washington is a multi-first, certainly not like 3 first-round pick. He's a good role player, and I think would be valuable. We've seen him play the stretch 4, stand in the corner, shoot, play really good defense, be a good athlete. behind Luka on that title run. I think he could provide similar value to the Spurs in that spot. So there are two other guys that I think the Spurs could look at. One is I've got my roommate from freshman years from Houston, and he's a Rockets fan. Fox for KD, no picks, just straight up. I think is really interesting. It's partially more interesting because Fox is from Houston. So as much as I think Fox wants to stay a Spur, and as much as the Spurs have said that they still have full confidence in him and everything, is what Brian Wright said after the draft. I think that just might be a spot where Fox isn't quite as disgruntled if he gets traded to. It also gives the Rockets a real point guard and not having to rely on Fred VanVleet coming off of his ACL tear. Fox is younger, right? Going to be 28, so he's fits that timeline better in terms of Amin and Şengün. You don't have to give up Amin and Şengün. You don't have to disgruntle or break up the young core anymore. And you just plug Fox in. Kevin Durant comes to the Spurs. He does not fix the defense of fix the defense. Spurs defense doesn't need to fix, but he's not providing a ton of value in terms of defense. He's not providing a ton of value in terms of rebounding. What he is a knockdown shooter, a guy who has shown you time and time again he doesn't care if you want to play with him as a primary creator or not. In fact, he might prefer it if the primary creation is on Harper and Castle, but he's gives you more spacing than anybody that I've mentioned, and he answers the, hey, we need a bucket late in the game, can we just give it to someone to go get it? Yeah, you can give it to him. He can still do that. He obviously has age concerns, will he finish the season healthy concerns, and the toxic locker room behavior kind of concerns. I gotta be honest, I don't hate that. I don't know, nor do I. I'm not sure about the locker room stuff with Kevin Durant. I don't think the specific criticisms of that his burners leveled at his teammates this year would translate to the Spurs and their best players of Harper and Wemby or Castle. Maybe the turnover one for Castle, but I certainly don't think that he maybe name call them in the same regards, just given their play. But obviously, totally understand not wanting to do that. But he does answer the late game and the spacing questions at that 4 spot to be able to play it. And then last but not least, certainly not least, is we have Kawhi Leonard. Now, Kawhi is probably the best player of all the guys that I've named left right now, right? He was excellent last year. He answers every question. He helps you from a defensive standpoint, a rebounding standpoint, a spacing standpoint. I think the only question with him is he is made it very clear he is looking for a contract extension and what the price of that contract. So when I talked about this, when it was first reported back just a few days ago with the LaMelo trade, I said, look, Vassell and Johnson makes the money work. If I was Spurs, I wouldn't be touching any of the young players that they have, but you would obviously in this instance probably have to give up a pick or two, maybe even 3. If Trey Murphy ends up going for 3 and Jaylen Brown goes for 4 first-round picks, which, again, both seem maybe a little much to me, you would imagine that the Spurs are going to have to give up at least 2 for Kawhi. If Kawhi is looking for $40-50 million for each of the next 2 seasons, then my answer to that is no, I wouldn't want to do that. But if they're looking but if he's just saying, hey, no, I want $60 million over 2 seasons, I'm looking at $30 million a piece for each of the next 2 years, I think if I was Spurs, I would do that. That's a little bit more than what they'd be paying Vassell for those same 2 years. And he's obviously a much better player than Vassell. Answers the late game questions, great isolation score. So if that's the deal that can be done, um, Vassell Johnson picks and that kind of contract extension, then I am all in on Kawhi back to the Spurs. I also spoke about how I don't know what it means. I don't know that the city of San Antonio is all back in on the Spurs. I was at the Clipper Spurs game where the Spurs came back from 25. Kawhi got booed a lot during intros. He got booed when he touched the ball a lot during the game. Like, I don't, you know, I personally am not holding the grudge against the guy for what happened 8 seasons ago, almost a decade ago now. But uh, I think that city still might be. So for whatever that's worth, and then obviously you have the people within the organization. I don't know how that would sit with them. Uncle Dennis is still very involved. If any of the stuff that I saw about all of the aspiration stuff is true, which is maybe a piece that honestly, as I'm saying it now, I didn't really even consider the last time when I talked about this. I don't know what the acquiring team in a Kawhi Leonard trade would have to worry about in terms of any potential suspensions or contract voids that may be coming his way if Adam Silver and the league ever actually finish this investigation and decide to punish the Clippers, which maybe they never will. Who knows? Silver's way more concerned about making the lottery way more confusing. So, teams that are bad but not quite the worst in the league have the best shot. But, that is what it is. So I digress. That's what I would worry about the most with Kawhi is what it would cost in terms of his extension, because his extension is going to run right into and parallel with Wimby's and then Castle's, and then depending on how long, into Harper's. So not looking to kind of hold that kind of money over necessarily for a guy who is his age. All right. So anything else? I don't think so. So yeah, I think ideally for this, if you're the Spurs, you get Rui or you get Collins in free agency. That answers the power forward spot, and then you probably don't make a trade for a big time power forward this offseason, and you give Castle and Harper and Champagny and all these guys and Carter Bryant another year, another run, and see what everyone's development looks like before taking Fox and a bunch of picks if you feel like you still need to next offseason to go improve the power forward spot or make any big changes to this roster. So we'll see. Again, free agency will kick off next week and into July. So we will see what the Spurs do. I will have reaction at some point as things happen. But if you like this content, like, rate, subscribe, leave a comment, tell me everything I'm wrong, what you think the Spurs should do, who you think they should sign, if you think they have another need besides power forward. But thanks, you guys. Talk to you next time. Bye.